Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maura Duran, and you are very welcome to the Her Heart Matters webinar with the Irish Heart Foundation. Today, of course, on World Heart Day. Now, today's webinar, How Every Woman Can Take Charge of Her Heart Health, will be open conversation, as always, when we do these. And we're going to aim to give you practical tools, of course, confidence as well, and inspiration to protect your heart health. Thanks to the Department of Health Women's Health Fund and the HSE for supporting today's event. Now, over the next 75 minutes, we are going to hear the key symptoms of heart disease and stroke in women and how it can affect you, and also the difference between women's heart health and men's heart health, how life stages like menopause can affect your heart health, and also, of course, what to do about that. Practical, realistic steps as well for you to help lower your heart disease and stroke risk. Now, we have a small panel today to make sure that we get in-depth questions. We'll also be taking some of your questions that you very kindly put into us when you registered for this webinar today. And of course, we will have that conversation at the end. Now, thank you for giving us those questions. And if you have more specific medical questions, of course, always go and see your GP. Now, let us know on social media that you're tuning in. You can visit the Irish Heart Foundation. You can tag us on X, Instagram or LinkedIn and use the hashtag #HerHeartMatters. Now, if you can't stay for the whole webinar, the recording will be emailed to you shortly. Share it, of course, as always, with your mother, with your sister, with any woman that it can help today. So before we get started, let us take a look at a short video, and this is going to explain to us a little bit more about the campaign.
There's a false belief that heart disease and stroke is a man's disease, when in fact there are many women-specific factors.
So what happens is, as you age through your ovarian lifespan and your estrogen levels start to drop, you lose the cardiac protection.
80% of premature heart disease and stroke is preventable through healthy lifestyles.
Mind yourself, look after your heart.
Join the Her Heart Matters movement. See irishheart.ie.
Now, before we get started, we would like you to take part in a poll, which is going to come up on screen now. Thank you, my dear. Okay. Now we're back on? Yes. Thank you very much, Stephen. Now, I have the results of the poll here, and we're going to take these questions as you voted. So, signs and symptoms of heart disease and stroke in women. There was 35% of you wanted to hear that first. Then we have practical everyday heart healthy tips, which of course is very relevant and very important. And how menopause affects heart health. 29% of you want to talk about that, and hearing real women's stories. Also, you wanted to talk about that. Well, that brings us on to a real woman's story here. We have Sharon Butler beside me here today. And Sharon, unfortunately, you're an expert on heart health by experience, because on your 46th birthday in 2019, you got indigestion.
Yeah,
It felt like indigestion. We also have Dr. Louise Fitzgerald, who's a GP. Louise was with us as well last year. Now, Louise has special interest, of course, a GP, but special interest in menopause and women's health. You're founder as well, Louise, of the website informed.ie. And we have our Irish language interpreters with us today to help you guys at home, Leila and Vanessa, who will be signing along today. Thank you all. So back to you, Sharon. 2019, Your 46th birthday.
Yeah.
What a birthday present. Tell us, you
Yeah.
started feeling, is it a bit of indigestion you thought you had?
Yeah, I'd been in town with my daughter shopping, and we came home. Everything was fine. I didn't feel anything beforehand, no kind of like warning signs or anything like
I
that.
see.
And then I started to get this pain. It just felt like really bad indigestion, like something maybe was stuck in my esophagus, and I thought maybe I ate something too fast. So I was standing there, and while I was standing there, my daughter said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, it just feels like a bit of really bad indigestion." So she said, "Your colour's funny, ma'am. You know, you've got a kind of a grey colour." And I said, "No, it'll be fine in a minute. It'll pass. It'll pass." But then it didn't pass. It kept going on and on. So then she was saying, "I think maybe you should ring an ambulance." And I said, "Don't be silly. You know, it'll pass. You know, it'll be fine." So I went to the sink. Then I took a glass of water, and I don't know, I wouldn't say it made it worse, but it felt like it was just gradually getting worse. Nothing was helping, so to speak. So then I sat down, and I had tingling feeling in my hands then, like pins and needles. And my daughter then at that stage, because I was refusing to go to the hospital, she rang my husband, who had a little bit of knowledge at the time about symptoms of heart attack. So he came on the phone to me, and he was asking me lots of questions, and I was telling him, look, yeah, it's just like really bad heartburn, and I've tingling in my hands. And he said, look, you ring an ambulance immediately or to go to the hospital. He said, because it sounds to me like you're having a heart attack. And I said, you're joking me. I said, I'm not having a heart attack. I said, sure, I'm walking around the place, I'm fine, you know. I said, it's just a bit of indigestion. And he said, no, seriously, you need to ring the ambulance. And I was still refusing. I was being really
And you were
stubborn.
probably about an hour into it at this stage, were you?
Well, I was about, at that stage probably, I was still arguing with him, so I was maybe about, I was about maybe half an hour into it at that stage. And so he then, when he seen that I wasn't going to ring an ambulance, because to be honest, I felt silly. I thought I'd look stupid if I went to the hospital, and they'd say, oh, it's just indigestion, what's she coming up here for, wasting our time? So I delayed, and then he hopped in a cab and came straight out and got me. He asked me, had I any aspirin in the house? And I said, no, why would I have aspirin? And he stopped and got aspirin. And then when he arrived, he told me, take 300 milligrams of aspirin. I took that. He put me in the car. I said, come on. And the way he was acting, I kind of took him seriously. Then I knew, yeah, and then they were still saying my colour was really off and everything. So went to the hospital. When I got there, he went and spoke to the staff and said the symptoms that I was presenting with, and they took it very seriously. He was, at the time, he was a trainee doctor, so I think that's why they kind of listened to him. They listened to the symptoms and that. So they saw me almost immediately. Within a few minutes, I was taken in and given an ECG. And that was abnormal. So then I think I really started to take it seriously then. I started to realise, right, there may be something to this. So both the nurse and James then kind of talked me through what was going to happen next. And over the course of the next few hours, I had blood tests, and which confirmed then ultimately that, yes, I had had a heart attack.
First of all, 46 seems very young to me, and I'm sure people watching today as well, it seems very young. And indigestion, I mean, God, we all could suffer from a bit of indigestion now and again. Yeah. And when we think, regular folk like us, we think if you are having a heart attack, you'd be clutching your heart, you would feel dreadful. But no, this was happening. This did happen to you. Dr. Louise, are these typical symptoms or atypical?
I mean, indigestion would be one we do think of, and as you were saying, your husband is a doctor, so he correctly identified that as a potential cardiac symptom. I think the thing with women is that we do often have more atypical symptoms. So for me, chest pain and indigestion would be more typical, though not so much for the public. But other symptoms you might see might be shortness of breath, dizziness, fatigue. You mentioned you were getting some pain in your jaw after a few minutes, back pain, neck pain, arm pain. Sometimes people get palpitations. And I suppose the reason for that is when we think of heart disease, we often think of heart attacks. But women, unfortunately, we also get these very specific conditions that men actually don't often suffer from. And you were saying yourself that the type of heart attack you had is quite typical for women and more typical in younger women. So the reason we have this range of symptoms is often to do with the underlying heart disease being a little bit different as well. There was two things that struck me from Sharon's story. Is number one is the advocacy piece, because I think a lot of women think I'm wasting people's time here. They're going to shoo me away, sort of thing. And unfortunately, that does happen to women, and there's lots of research to show that women do get dismissed from medical services. So it's great that you had someone to advocate for you, and that's so important. But it's so important if you do think something is wrong, and you have a symptom that's especially sudden, severe, or worsening, to definitely get urgent care and urgent attention, because we have a window of treatment that we want to get people treated within. So for us, it's actually really important people seek urgent attention as well.
It's interesting that you said there, Sharon, that you kind of felt you'd be wasting other people's time. And, this campaign over the years has put spotlights on that too, because women often feel that we'll be grand and off we go.
Yeah.
And we don't listen to our bodies. Do you feel that you were kind of guilty of that?
Yes, definitely. Now, when I look back on it, I realise now the importance of listening to, like, we all know our own bodies at the end of the day. And if I'm completely honest, I knew something was wrong. That
For a while?
I knew at the time this was a different kind of pain. It wasn't just like normal indigestion. I knew it felt really severe, really bad, and I was playing it down. I suppose I was a little bit worried, and I could see my daughter's face that she was really worried about me. So I knew, this is something different, and I still was dismissing it out of. I mean, it was so silly looking back because I was afraid I'd be embarrassed going up to the hospital if I got it wrong. And that's so silly because, I mean, I could have lost my life had it not been really for both my husband and my daughter pushing me to go to the hospital, encouraging me.
Our theme this year is how to talk about your heart health, how to share your story, and how to empower yourself to take action. If we can take this one by one, actually, Louise, maybe with you, how to talk about your heart health. You're a GP, you have special interest, of course, in the area of menopause, and I'm sure a lot of women would come to you and you discuss heart health with them. How do you talk to your GP about heart health?
I mean, I think the big thing is I do a lot of public speaking on menopause and health is a lot of people feel dismissed by their doctors. So trying to talk to a doctor can be really tricky at times. I think writing things down is really important. I love when people come with a list and write things down.
So make your notes before you come.
Yeah,
it's a good idea
like that,
because you might forget going in.
Yeah. I think a lot of doctors get intimidated by that, but actually I think it's really beneficial. I love when people come with a list. The Irish Heart Foundation actually have some lovely leaflets, one on the symptoms of heart attacks.
We have it here actually, yeah.
One on questions to ask your doctor. And I think a lot of people come in and they will often ask for blood tests, and they'll sort of think, what blood tests can I do? And really important blood tests are cholesterol and a fasting blood sugar to check for diabetes. So that's a good way of starting the conversation. I find it a good way as a GP of starting the conversation. For me, it's never too early to start looking at your heart health. I think a cholesterol at any point in your life is really beneficial. And we have different cardiovascular risk scores that we can look at and then tell you what your risk of having a heart attack is. So I often do open up the conversation with people, but equally, if you feel your GP is not opening up the conversation with you, I think asking the questions that the Irish Heart Foundation have on their leaflet, which is simply about blood pressure, cholesterol, weight, and changes they can make that will help their heart, or writing things down. I think writing things down can be really powerful.
It's actually really interesting when you look at this. I was holding the other side around, but on this side of the leaflet, the questions let's just go through them actually. Heart health checkup. How often should you have a heart health checkup, or should it be once a year like a blood test, or as you said, maybe open the conversation with cholesterol?
Yeah, I think it depends on age a little bit how often you should have a heart health checkup. And when we say heart health checkup, we really mean blood test check for cholesterol and fasting glucose check for diabetes and diabetes testing, and a blood pressure, which is so important. Like ECGs, which is like a sticker test on the heart, that doesn't really need to be part of the heart health checkup unless really indicated by your doctor. So I think it varies a little bit, but I think opening up the conversation and saying to your doctor, when should I start, is a really good idea. For women in their 40s and 50s, I usually do it once a year.
A blood test, is it?
Yeah, a cholesterol test once a year and a blood pressure once a year. In your 30s, probably every 2 years. Again, it depends on family history a little bit and on any diabetes or smoking history as well. If someone has a family history of heart disease, particularly under the age of 60, then I might start that a little bit earlier. And also you might think about some extra scans and things like that for that person, particularly around the time that maybe that relative had a heart problem.
Okay. 46 again, I'm sure people watching will think it is quite young, but I suppose we are in perimenopause, heading into menopause in our 40s. We talked about the overlooked signs there, and almost you were asymptomatic when it came to those signs that we don't kind of realise maybe men would be different. Could heart disease or heart attack, or can we confuse it sometimes with anxiety and with menopause? Maybe we'll start talking about that a little.
Yes, I mean both individually and together. I think that's probably a big thing for women is we sort of that guilt piece and that blame piece and that dismissal piece that, you know, we sort of think, well, I'm just really stressed right now. I have parents to take care of. I have kids going to school. They're doing whatever Leaving Cert might be or exams they're doing. And this is, you know, palpitations, stress, dizziness, fatigue. It's just a sign of that. So I think it's easy to think that this is, you know, just that symptom, and then to think, well, I'm just being silly here. I'm putting it down to that. Menopause in itself obviously can bring on palpitations, sweating, dizziness, a whole plethora of symptoms. So again, it's easy, I think, to then think, well, and even from a doctor point of view, it's always very important if someone comes in with palpitations and sweating, not to say, well, it's, you know, it's just the menopause. But I think it's very easy to put those symptoms down to something else. And the diseases are so interesting. I had a lady recently who came in to see me, and she was having a shortness of breath on the stairs. And she was saying, well, I'm just very unfit. But I've known this lady for a few years, and I was like, this is very much a new symptom for you. It's very different for you. So I referred her off to cardiology, and she has a heart condition where it's her very small blood vessels are affected by the problem. So essentially, it's still that lack of flow of blood through the heart, but it's the small vessels getting affected. Yeah. So she just had this shortness of breath, and she was so nice about it. She was so lovely. She was just like, it's just that I'm unfit. I just thought I mentioned to you, but it's just that I'm unfit. And only for me sort of saying, well, no, this is definitely, you know, we need to look into this. She probably would have just.
I think that's great, Louise, because the thing is, you see, I would be like that, or lots of women, you would not bother to mention that. Sharon, did you ever have any of those symptoms, like a little bit of breathlessness? You just got hit that day. Do you have anything before that?
I've tried to think about this quite a bit to see had I anything leading up to it, even in the days or weeks. I know myself, I was feeling stress. I was definitely feeling under stress at the time. I had kind of a lot going on, and but I don't remember actually feeling any physical symptoms like sweating or anything like that, or pain, any pain or
breath.
No, nothing like that. I have no memory of anything like that leading up to it. Maybe I had a little bit and I didn't notice so much, or I just thought like that. It was, oh, I'm just unfit, you know, I'm overweight or whatever it may be. So maybe I just did and I dismissed it, but I mean, I'd be lying if I said I did, because I can't remember having anything in the lead up to it. There's nothing that stood out to me other than feeling a bit stressed at the time, you know.
But I suppose lifestyle as well. I mean, you know, let's talk about lifestyle. The reality is, you know, putting your body, your mind, everything under stress. I mean, women are a bit prone to that, aren't we? Children and looking out for other people more than ourselves sometimes.
I think as well as, you know, in Sharon's condition, it probably was something that would come on quite suddenly, like the symptoms probably come on quite suddenly. But I think a really important thing about stress and lifestyle is our blood pressure. And stress does tend to increase people's blood pressure and does put a lot of strain on the heart. And a lot of people sort of say, oh, you know, blood pressure has no symptoms, and it often doesn't have symptoms, or we're not identifying those symptoms as being high blood pressure. So I've had a few women come in their 40s actually, and they've had astronomically high blood pressures, like 190 to 200 over, you know, 100, 120, and your ideal blood pressure is 120 over 80. So these are hugely high blood pressures, and we've in most cases send them to the emergency department because we consider it an emergency. And actually then looking back on it when they've been treated and they're feeling better, they're sort of saying, actually, I probably did have some symptoms there, but I just didn't realize it was blood pressure. So things like kind of pressure at the back of the head, or whooshing symptoms at the back of the head, or heaviness in their arms and their legs. And actually, once they've got the blood pressure under control, that's been improved. But I think that piece of being stressed is so important because, you know, a lot of women say, well, I'm stressed, that's why my blood pressure is high. But it's sometimes very hard to reduce your stress, you know, and bring that blood pressure down. And blood pressure is just such an important thing for us to be looking at when it comes to heart health.
You know, there's nothing wrong with asking your doctor to check your blood pressure when you go
in. Absolutely. We should be doing it every consultation, really. Yeah. Sometimes, obviously, it's hard to have the time, but it's definitely once a year, every 6 months, we should be checking blood pressure. Yeah. And it's so quick to do because you just pop the monitor on and hit the button and then talk to the person, you know, while their blood pressure is being taken. Now, some people are a little bit sensitive to that, but most people you can actually just do it when you're chatting to them.
Yeah. Did you have heart issues in the family, Sharon, or did you know that?
No, none that I know of at all. So it was quite a shock, really. I suppose the type of heart attack I had too, though, it's called a SCAD, a spontaneous coronary artery dissection. So it's like a sudden tear in one of the arteries. So it's a little bit different. It's quite an uncommon type of heart attack, and it does mostly, as Louise said, affect women. Yeah, there was definitely no history of anything like that in my family, or heart disease in general. So
because we often hear that, you know, there's familial issues as well, or symptoms. Sharon has a bit. Can I hold this for you?
Yeah.
So you went into the hospital. We got your story to the point that you had the ECG and you started being treated. So then, obviously, you were in shock. And this is going back to 2019. What I have here now. This is what one of the doctors drew. Now, we're not saying it's a rough drawing. We're not going to put it up on a museum anywhere or anything. But just let's take a look at this. This is your heart.
Yeah.
So tell us about this drawing that you keep with you since 2019, since you had the heart attack.
It's quite important to me actually because I was very upset because I had been in the hospital probably about 2 days at that stage, and although I'd had an angiogram and they had told me after the angiogram what type of heart attack I had, that it was a SCAD, I didn't really understand what a SCAD was, and I was upset at the time too because the angiogram is very uncomfortable and you know it's stressful, so I didn't really take in the information that they were giving me at the time. So I remember being back up in the bed and trying to remember what had been said to me and getting very upset because I didn't remember and not really understanding. And one of the nurses, who was lovely, came in and said to me, are you okay, you know? And I said, I don't understand what happened to me, and is it going to happen again? And I was like really panicked, and I started getting all upset and crying. She said, oh look, I'll get someone to come talk to you. She said, there's no problem at all. So this lovely registrar came up. His name is actually on so that's actually the report of my angiogram. He printed that off and came up to the bed and sat on the bed, and he drew this picture of my heart and showed me where the SCAD had occurred on the heart. So you can see here, so this is the blood, his representation of the blood coming out. And he explained it all to me, and he let me ask as many questions as I wanted until I felt I'd calmed down and I felt okay. And I actually felt like giving him a hug when it was all over because he was just so gentle.
So
and
he drew a
so
very
lovely.
rudimentary picture and said, this is it.
Yeah.
And he explained, and then does that make you feel better when you kind of understood? You see, there's a lot of this as well, just basic understanding that we are just regular folk walking around. And when something like that happens to you, or when we visit our GP, are there simple ways we can ask these questions? Because this is so important.
Yeah, I think, you know, and because that piece of empowerment and that talk, share, empower, like I think knowledge
that's the
is
empowerment we're
information.
talking about.
Exactly, yeah. Because if you have information, it really does make you feel like you're in control of your health. I think one thing is a lot of GPs will often fire off a text when you've had blood tests done.
I have no idea what those things are about, by the way, when I get them. I'm just like looking it up.
Yeah, I tend to bring people in and calculate their cardiovascular risk score and go through that with them. It calculates a percentage, and you can go through that with patients. So I think going in and saying to your GP, I want to know what my risk is, I want to know what my cholesterol is, knowing your numbers, and the HSE has a great campaign called Know Your Numbers, and they have great little cards that I give to my patients. But knowing like what is your blood pressure, what is your cholesterol, you know,
Your heart rate, all these things.
yeah, what is your diabetes risk as well, because we can do blood sugars and things like that. So I think knowing those basic parameters is really important. And it is tricky. You know, I think that the whole campaign of like, you know, your mother, your sister, your grandmother, your aunt. My mum has had a heart condition in the last year, and the advocacy piece again. You know, it's kind of taking quite a bit of advocacy from our side as well to sort of help support her, and asking her and telling her what questions to ask as well.
And also, I suppose we talk here about generational. We have it here on the screen behind us. My sister, my girlfriend, my niece, my partner, my wife, my daughter, my grandmother, my friend, my mother, my aunt. The list goes on. We as women should probably discuss this amongst ourselves as well, generationally.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that? Do you feel now after your experience that you talk about this more?
Yeah, at first I didn't. When I came home, I think I was very conscious of worrying my family. I have a daughter. She was 21 at the time when this happened. So I was very conscious of making her maybe more upset. And the same with my husband. He was busy. He just started his intern year. And I just thought, so I kept it to myself quite a lot. But one of the nurses had given me a little card with a Facebook group. And she said they're great support. She said for SCAD patients, she said maybe if you reach out to them. And a few weeks went by, but I felt I was keeping things in. And then eventually I did reach out to them, and they were so helpful. And I got so much information and so much support. I was able to dip in and out, and as I kind of needed
experiences,
it.
similar and different.
Yeah, exactly. And I was able to put in things into the group like, I'm still having chest pain. It's 3 months later. Is this normal? Does anyone else experience that? And you'd get a whole load of answers. Oh yeah, I still have pain after X amount of months. And you'd kind of go away after, and you'd feel, phew, okay, well that's normal. And it would kind of make you feel better. Right. So there was a huge amount of support in that. But also then that taught me, people started encouraging me to speak to my family and over time, I did start to have more conversations with my daughter. They'd be, fussing over you a lot. If I tried to hoover or anything, the hoover would be dragged out of my hand.
couldn't do
Don't
anything.
do that. Don't lift
Stop
that,
your
don't do
life
that.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after a few months, I knew myself, like, your own body, what I kind of could do and what I couldn't. And I wasn't going to do anything too strenuous either. I was kind of watching myself. So I sat down and had a conversation about how, look, lads, I'm minding myself. I really am. And you don't have to kind of mother me so much. But I said, I will let you know when I need help. I'll reach out and I'll ask for help if something is too strenuous or whatever. And then they started kind of talking to me, and I started opening up to them about how I felt and what I was going through mentally. And that was great. Then we had, after that, we had much more open conversations about it. And I think that actually really helped my daughter. She then wasn't half as stressed as, I didn't even really know how stressed she was about the whole thing until we started having those open conversations about it.
And that's the empowerment part of it as well, isn't it? The kind of knowing, reaching out to the Facebook page, of course, the doctors in the hospital, having the discussion, and then being able to kind of empower your daughter too, to stop her being nervous or getting stressed out, because that's another generation of worry that you'll be passing on. We talked there about the symptoms and how they're different, like Sharon's symptoms, and in our poll, everybody seemed to want to know about practical, everyday, heart-healthy tips as well. That was next on the list, Louise. So tell us about that. What can we do?
So the top 3 things that come to mind when people ask me about that is smoking, movement, and diet. So smoking, if you're a smoker, the single most important step you can take to live longer is stopping smoking. So it's really important. And I say to all my patients who smoke cigarettes, vaping causes different problems, and we definitely don't want people vaping because we know that causes huge problems with the lungs now, but it's slightly different to cigarettes. If you smoke cigarettes, it breaks down collagen, and we're all trying to pack collagen in. So
Putting so much stuff on their face to help.
Exactly.
The most expensive creams in the world. Yeah.
So, if you don't want to live longer, you want to look more beautiful and younger looking. And if you stop smoking, the HSE have a great little calculator on quit.ie where you can calculate how much money you save when you by stopping smoking, and then what you can spend it on. So I'm like, if you won't stop smoking for living longer or beauty, then do it for money. So stopping smoking and not smoking is so important. It's not in every story as your story. There's no cigarettes
Well, it's
involved,
better
but
these days. I feel there's so much more information than say in my day with people. So many more people smoked. So that's a good
Exactly.
thing. I think we're informed. But
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
smoking. Okay.
Stop
I was
smoking.
a smoker though.
Okay, interesting. Yeah,
but
Were you?
Yeah, I was a smoker. So, but I gave them up a year before my heart attack. But when I asked the cardiologist afterwards what was the best thing I could do to prevent this happening again, that was what he said to me: never pick up a cigarette again. And I never did, thank God. So
Yeah, thank God. Yeah. Well done.
And then movement. So exercise is so important. And obviously we were talking about my interest in menopause and weight gain and issues of weight around your 40s and 50s really comes up at every perimenopause and menopause conversation. And movement becomes really important as you move through your 40s and 50s. So getting your cardiovascular exercise in, whether that's running, cycling, swimming, trying to do that for 30 minutes 5 times a week. If you can't get 30 minutes, then break it down into.
And you can walk
to
as
10.
well. I mean, walking
Exactly.
is the best exercise.
Yeah, or you cycle here.
Walk
I think,
quickly.
so.
Yeah, I cycle a bit. Yeah, but walking, I find, we can all. It doesn't cost any money. We don't have to be in the gym. You don't
Exactly.
need expensive equipment. You can just get out there, walk. And do you feel that when you're walking? I mean, I was reading about this whole new Japanese walking thing now that everyone's talking about. The kind of walk for 2 minutes quickly and then slow, whatever. But it doesn't matter as long as you push your heart. Is that it?
Yeah, you just want it says moderate intensity exercise.
Okay.
So you can still hold a conversation, but it's slowed down.
Right.
You feel the heart beating sort of a little bit quicker.
You're
but
slightly out of breath.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So just challenging yourself that little bit more. And the RT did a great program, I thought, on superagers. I don't know if either of you saw it, but I really enjoyed it. And Mimi was in her kitchen doing her exercises. So movement is so important for us going into our later life as well.
Totally.
And then not to forget resistance training. So the weight loss or weight gain in our 40s and 50s is often related to loss of muscle mass. So we have plenty of muscle in our 20s and early 30s, and that burns lots of calories for us. But as we move through our 40s and 50s, we lose muscle, and muscle burns calories, so we're not burning as many calories. So trying to get a little bit of resistance training, and there's a lovely little bit about resistance training in the Self-Care and Wellbeing Journal from the Irish Heart Foundation at the back. But that means using either free weights or your own body weight, or weights you can kind of strap on, and doing that like 3 times a week for 10 minutes, 3 times a week.
And that's
to
only
maintain that
10
muscle.
minutes. But another thing when it comes to our bone health, the importance to resistance training for our
Resistance
bone
training
health.
is so important for that. Yeah, so it's important for our heart, but important for our bones as well.
Let's talk about menopause. Of course, this is your special area of interest as a GP as well as menopause. But menopause and heart health, it has a big impact.
Yes, so I always describe estrogen as our superpower. So estrogen is so good for our bones, but our heart and our brain as well, and our blood pressure. So keeps our vessels and keeps our heart lovely and elastic. And then unfortunately, in perimenopause, our estrogen is fluctuating around the place like a roller coaster. And then postmenopause, so when our periods stop, our estrogen level goes down extremely low and will continue being very low into our later years.
What are we talking about? Because when it comes to stats, when it comes to estrogen, it just literally goes off the edge of a cliff when your periods stop. Is that right?
Periods stop. Yeah, exactly. Probably at different rates for different people, but certainly, yeah, it goes down to extremely low levels. And that's why people get such severe symptoms. Now, some people get more severe symptoms in perimenopause because of the fluctuating levels, but for some people, it's when it goes down to very low levels that people will really get hot flushes and sweats. And we do think hot flushes and sweats, the frequency you get that can relate actually to heart health as well.
Okay, tell us more about that, because I don't know if a lot of people know that.
So if you're getting more hot flushes, but particularly the hot flushes throughout a day, then you may be at slightly higher risk of cardiovascular disease.
I don't know if people know that, to be honest, Louise, or take note of that. So what can we do then when it comes to menopause?
So again, not smoking, movement, and then diet is so important as well. So no one leaves my office without having a conversation about fibre. Not a very stimulating conversation, but you need 30 grams, if not more, of fibre in your diet in a day. On average in Ireland, we get between 7 and 15 grams of fibre. I think people think of fibre and they think of very boring and bland foods, but actually most fibre is beautiful and colourful and bright.
Vegetables?
So vegetables, celery, broccoli, carrots, peppers, your tomatoes, red peppers, blueberries, chia seeds. All these things are full of fibre and they're so good for you. And just to give the context, like one apple is 4 grams of fibre. So you need up on 7 or 8 apples in your diet in a day, or equivalent of other high fibre foods to get that real fibre boost in.
Because we always feel the spotlight is on protein as we get older, and we just don't have the fibre conversation.
No, and protein is also very important, obviously, for bones. But the fibre, I suppose, it's just not a nutrient that we really focus on. And the other good thing about fibre is that it tends to fill us up. It helps lower blood pressure and lower weight. So, we're very worried about weight as we go through our 40s and 50s. And the average weight gain in menopause is 1.5 kilograms per year. So women gain on average 10 kilos as they go through perimenopause. So if you can do something to reduce that, that bit of movement and introducing more fibre in your diet. And, if you... I think a lot of women think that they'll bloat once they start taking more fibre in. But actually, you're unlikely to go from 7 grams to 30 grams overnight. And so if you gradually introduce more fibre, you actually feel much better because, it helps bowel motions pass. So actually people feel...
The gut, everything.
Exactly. It's so good for your gut in terms of microbiome. And we're, all about the microbiome these days. So, it's such a natural and easy way to introduce, healthy food.
And I suppose if you started in the morning with a bowl of porridge, porridge is very good. And porridge is very good for lowering cholesterol and heart health as well.
So, and then if you could add some chia seeds to that, or strawberries or blueberries as well, and just kind of really boost it up. I find a lot of people lean on porridge and brown bread for their fibre intake, and it tends actually not to be enough. So it's probably looking more around the fruits and vegetables a little bit more.
Yeah. So I suppose 40s and 50s kind of change the focus. Try and be aware of your fibre. Be aware of that 30 grams and do it throughout the day. But I suppose, look, basically apples are very good as well. And apples are very good as well to help move everything through your system.
Yeah, and that's the fibre in the apple, really. And I think it's never too early to start. I was doing a talk on Google last week on women's health. And, I started talking about, because you were saying there, how do we talk about heart health? So I slip heart health into every conversation. Probably I'm the daughter of a dietitian and a cardiologist, so it's a bad combination.
You're perfectly poised. There was no other way you were going any other direction
Exactly, yeah. But I think if you can put it into every conversation, and it's never too early to start in terms of the healthy changes.
Brilliant. Talking about menopause there, we talked about the hot flushes. We talked about, of course, the hormonal changes and the sweats, and that can have an impact. Should you talk to your doctor about that if you're having a lot? And what about HRT and heart health? I think it's a conversation that a lot of women want answers to.
Yeah. So I think we mainly start HRT for symptoms. When really it's just for symptoms. But lots of women now come in, and women are really well educated around menopause and heart health as well. And it's so great to see that. I love when people come in and say to me, I want something because of this, and we have a conversation around it. So I do have women coming in now saying I want HRT for my bones, my muscles, like they're training and they want it for their muscles, or for their heart. it's not licensed for that use, but in all reality, women in their 40s, 50s, they are having some sort of menopausal symptom. So if you kind of go, well, let's talk about the evidence here, about the impact it has on bones and heart, and maybe try some HRT. Most women will come back to you and say, I took this because I wanted it for my bones or my heart, but actually now it's treated my rosacea, or my hair is better, or
Because
my
it's giving you that estrogen back that you're losing, basically.
Exactly, yeah. So, I think it's definitely valuable having that conversation. And, thankfully, it used to be very hard to talk to anybody about menopause, but thankfully now the conversation is really opening up with GPs and doctors about menopause, and I think it's much easier to find a GP.
And I guess there are different types of HRT as well. I mean, maybe it's not for anyone if you're not experiencing symptoms. Can you go through menopause without HRT?
Yes, definitely, absolutely. So we say 25% of women get symptoms, and then 75% of women don't. 25% of women don't get symptoms, and 75% of women get symptoms. I would say the 25% not getting symptoms are maybe just managing their symptoms very well, or they aren't recognizing whatever symptom they're having as being menopausal. But in theory, 25% of women are sort of, not having any problems with their menopause or perimenopause. And then 75% of women get symptoms. Of those, 25% get severe symptoms. So the majority of women are getting through menopause with only mild or sort of mild, moderate symptoms. It's a small percentage that have severe symptoms. So, you could say, well, actually, maybe only the people with severe symptoms need HRT. But I did have an accountant into me one time who had just brain fog. Brain fog was the only symptom she had, but she was not able to do her calculations and her numbers any longer. And it was obviously, she was an accountant, this was her work, and it was just one symptom, but it was really, really impacting her.
Like brain fog, as they call it.
Exactly, yeah. So we just put her on HRT, and she was, within 3 weeks, she was, flying back to her numbers again. So, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be having really severe, a whole multitude of symptoms to go on HRT. If you want HRT and you can have HRT and it looks like it's going to help with symptoms, then there's a reason to have it there.
Are there women that should not take HRT?
There are some women where we are very, either can't give HRT, unfortunately. So if you've had a history of breast cancer, womb cancer, ovarian cancer, we're very restricted there. But there are other options as alternatives we can give, but they're not hormonally based.
Okay.
There are other conditions, like say you've had a heart attack or a stroke, that we really have to look at it extremely, extremely carefully and decide about it.
So that is an issue if you've had a heart attack or a stroke already.
Yes.
You'll have to look at medication around that.
Well, we sometimes look at it. We just have to look at it very, very carefully. But I think the thing is that the really important thing with people going through menopause is that there is definitely help there. And if you can't have HRT, there are alternatives to HRT as well. They're not always as sort of brilliant as HRT, because HRT, basically we have estrogen receptors from the top of our head all the way down to our toes. So when we go through perimenopause and menopause, the reason we get so many symptoms is because we have those receptors everywhere and they want estrogen. So giving back the estrogen is what they want.
That's you're just rebalancing.
Exactly,
already.
yeah. But there are medications that we can use to try and help if you can't have HRT. And some women don't want to have HRT. They don't want hormones. They've had a bad experience with hormones.
Or maybe there's a lot of breast cancer in their family and they're
Exactly,
nervous
yeah.
about it.
Or they've gone through like fertility journey and they've had a huge amount of hormones at some point in their life. So for those women, we also might look at alternatives to HRT as well.
And look, to be honest, the whole HRT breast cancer link, it's been totally debunked, really. And unless you've had, doctors would advise, or certain physicians would advise, if you haven't had cancer yourself, you still could take a certain form of HRT. So that's a conversation for a GP or a specialist.
Yeah, like even if you've had a family history of breast cancer, we can still give
you can
HRT. Exactly. It's a risk balance assessment. And the other thing is, everything I've said before, like if you smoke cigarettes, you go through menopause on average 18 months earlier and much more severe. If you're more,
I don't know if people know that stat either.
No, yeah. If you're more overweight or sedentary, you'll probably have worse symptoms as well. And diet again comes into it. So those three things I sort of said about heart health earlier, those also all help with menopause as well.
And exercise does help with menopause.
Exercise really helps. Absolutely,
It
yeah.
really helps.
So whenever people come into me, I go through the three-armed approach, what you can do, and then what I can prescribe, which can be alternatives to HRT or HRT.
Right.
Yeah,
Sharon, since you've had a heart attack at a very young age, at 46, how was your mental health after that? How did you deal with that after you processed it? Because I'm sure it took about a year at least to process it, even though you started talking about it and all that.
Yeah, it was tough. I suppose I kind of when I came out of hospital, I went back to work within a month, which was probably
fast.
very soon, too soon now when I look back. But I kind of put a lot of pressure on myself to do that. I felt I kind of had to. It was a small business, and I felt I was kind of leaving the boss down if I wasn't there. He didn't make me feel that way, but I put that pressure really on myself. So then when I was back in work, and you're back doing the day to day, I looked fine to everybody. So it appeared like I was well because I was, walking around and I wasn't struggling or anything like that. But I still had chest pain. I had chest pain for a long time, like for
Is that normal?
several months afterwards. Yeah, and back pain as well too. So even things like I would have been dealing with files and stuff, moving boxes and stuff. I'd always be asking people, could you move that for me? Because everything seemed too heavy for me for a long time. But mentally, I wasn't ready to be back at work, and I wasn't ready for a lot of things. I think I was struggling. I wasn't talking at that stage for the first while. I wasn't really talking to people about it. So I was keeping everything in. I was getting upset a lot. I'd do things like I'd go into the bathroom for 5 minutes and I'd literally just weep, and then I'd be fixing my face up and go back out and pretend everything was fine. And I was like that for quite a while. I was waking up at night in a sweat. I often woke my daughter or James because I'd be shouting in my sleep, things like that.
I guess,
It was
was it?
fear.
Yeah.
It was I was in a constant state of worry that it was going to happen to me again, and it was just I kept thinking my brain was telling me it's just a matter of when, So that lasted for quite a long time as well too. And I didn't really talk about any of those symptoms with anyone because I thought they'd all think I'm a bit mad. But funny enough, the sooner I did start to talk about that and get a bit of help with that, I went to the GP and I spoke to my GP about that, and then I got a bit of counselling and stuff like that as well.
Did the counselling help? Because people
The
be wondering
counselling
about that.
really did help, because it was able to help me to kind of cope with that, gave me kind of coping mechanisms and stuff, and how to kind of find ways to help myself relax. Part of this whole thing as well with me was that I think I was stressed, as I said beforehand, but I wasn't doing enough things for myself, so to speak. I was rushing around doing a million things, going to work, looking after my family, doing X, Y, and Z, and I wasn't doing anything I loved anymore. Any of the things I used to like doing, I wasn't doing anymore. And even simple things like getting out and going for a walk in the evening, which I kind of would love doing, I'd stopped doing all those things because my life had gotten very busy. So once after it happened and after a few months had went by, I started doing things like that again with the help of my husband. He was great. He kept saying, come on, we're going for a walk. Even if I wasn't in the humour,
Did you
he'd
start
say,
slow,
come on.
though, Sharon?
Very slow, because I just mentally, I wasn't in humour for anything. Kind of, and I did feel, I suppose there's a little bit of self-pity too goes with it all as well.
You're allowed to have a little bit of
You think,
self-pity after a heart attack at
well, you
46.
kind of think, I just want to sit here and I'm entitled to because I've just had a heart attack. But there is a little bit, it's great to have people that will push you, and kind of, because he was great that way. He'd say, come on, we're going for the walk. And the minute I'd be out, I'd feel much better. And it was great because while we were walking, we'd talk. So it also helped me to get things out. And I'd go to bed then at night and I'd sleep well, I'd sleep solidly. So bit by bit, those nightmares stopped. I was sleeping a lot better. I was feeling a lot better. I suppose. But it took a long time.
So lifestyle changes, counselling you felt was really important. Lifestyle changes, get out literally and start walking and keep moving to that way.
Yeah.
Relationship-wise, I suppose you had to kind of talking through your, with your husband, your daughter, and then maybe friends, just not being afraid to discuss and not being fearful of this anymore.
And not worrying all the time that you're burdening people, because I think women do that a lot. We tend to let everyone else tell their problems to us, but we kind of feel if we tell anybody what's going on with us, we're burdening them, or we're going to worry them, and we're worrying about things like that all the time. And it is kind of silly, really. We do need to be able to lean on people as well, and to be able to say, this is wrong with me, or I'm struggling at the moment, which I would regularly say now. If I start to feel like I'm struggling, I'll just say it now. I would have never done that before. But obviously the counselling encouraged me to actually be very open about things like that. And I do now say, look, I'm really having a hard time this week. Could you guys help me out a bit more, or whatever?
Balancing your stress, really, isn't it? With the heart attack, with midlife, with going forward and all the other challenges that come in midlife, it's balancing that stress. And I suppose being open and sharing and asking for help.
Asking for help, yeah.
You've learned to
exactly.
do that because you probably didn't do that
No,
before.
Never did that before. I would have been a person that just got on with everything, you know.
Yeah.
I suppose I was the eldest child and the only girl, so there was a little,
You're a mommy.
little bit of that growing up.
Yeah.
I was the mom who
Yeah.
minded the 2 younger boys a lot, and so you just kind of get on with it, and you don't really reach out and ask for help. You just get used to doing that. So I suppose learning to do that was huge for me, and even my daughter says that all the time now. She would say to me, you know. You always just try and get on with things, and you don't ask people for help. And she's very good at asking for help or for, vocalizing her feelings. So she's helped me a great deal as well too, with kind of, being able to say to her, I'm having a really bad day today, I'm very stressed and whatever. And she'll kind of go, oh, well, I'll give you a hand with this or that or whatever. And that's the thing. Sometimes you don't even have to ask for help. You just have to tell people, I'm feeling a bit stressed today. And people will kind of dig in and help you out, the people who love you, you know.
I suppose as well, people don't know what to say to you. And do you find that when you're dealing with heart health, Louise, that maybe families around don't know how to help the person that's going through this?
Yeah, like a lot of families will come in and say, I know you can't tell me anything about my relative, but I'm just here to find out what I can do. And, I think that support piece is just so important. And, I think if you're making changes within a family, trying to make it like a family piece, that you're making that change as well, as opposed to being one person who has to make those changes. So I know the Irish Heart Foundation has this sort of habit mapping in their book there, but, it shouldn't be one person making that habit. It should be a sort of a family piece, I think.
Strategies, though? Are there strategies that for women themselves and maybe families that can help?
In terms of recognizing symptoms, I think it's a really important thing, and encouraging women to just go see a doctor as well, because I think a lot of time, we often
Beforehand, yeah.
Yeah. I think the menopause piece actually has been really important, because a lot of women are now coming in who wouldn't have been to see a doctor in years, and now they have this reason to come in, and actually, you're kind of capturing people with other problems going on that they wouldn't have picked up otherwise. So I think that family piece is the support piece around, well, you had to make a lot of changes to your lifestyle there, and it's great that your husband and daughter were so supportive around that. And then the advocacy piece that they were saying, you need help, let's get you the help as well. I think that's really important. And we do know that there's a lot of depression associated with heart problems, having had especially something like a big heart attack, that people do tend to get quite low mood afterwards.
Right, so that's normal that you would get low mood, and you need to kind of help that, yeah.
And even that like confidence piece as well. I think I think a lot of women, you lose your confidence when something happens like that as well. Like, you're the sort of person who nothing ever goes wrong. You hold everything together, and now it's sort of like, well, who's holding the show together now?
And you start to feel very old as well, all of a sudden. Like, I was just kind of getting on with life, and I wasn't feeling that old, if you know what I mean. I never thought of myself as old, but when that happened to me, all of a sudden I felt very old and very frail, and especially when people are trying to help and do things for you, and you can no longer lift something or do this or that, you start to feel, oh no, like this old lady now, and I can't do anything anymore for myself, and that tends to feed into the depression then, and the feeling a bit sorry for yourself too, and that's normal, as you said, I suppose, but it is that's very hard psychologically to cope with, I think.
It's actually
afterwards.
a very good point, because all of a sudden you're 40 one day and you feel you're pushed on a couple of decades, 2 or 3 or 4 decades.
And I was in a ward, actually, incidentally, when I went into hospital, with all men, and they were all old men. So I was number one, I was the only woman there, and number two, I was the only young person. Even their visitors were looking at me, and it felt so strange and so kind of, it was very upsetting. It was really upsetting to feel old like that,
If people are just joining us now, Louise, I think it would be a good time to kind of recap on, say, for example, with Sharon's symptoms, which are the atypical symptoms, and the difference between what a woman could experience if she has issues with her heart, even before a heart attack, and the comparisons to men. Because 1 in 4 women, that is the statistic.
So I think, first of all, the very important thing is to be attending your GP regularly to get checks done. But if you're getting sudden, severe, or worsening symptoms of chest pain being the obvious symptom, but there's more unusual symptoms of indigestion, shortness of breath, palpitations, dizziness, fatigue, jaw pain, neck pain, back pain, that you're seeking, urgent attention of that.
And also, I think it's important to say what we mentioned as well about menopause, that if you are getting an awful lot of hot flushes, an awful lot of sweats, that you could be more at risk than somebody who's not. So what else around menopause could put you more at risk?
the usual, so it's the usual risk factors. So
High blood
if you're
pressure?
high blood pressure, if you're a smoker,
Cholesterol?
diabetes, pre-diabetes. There are also things like if you've had gestational diabetes, so diabetes during pregnancy, or you've had high blood pressure in pregnancy, or preeclampsia, which is a condition of like high blood pressure in pregnancy. They probably do predispose you to certainly high blood pressure and diabetes in the future, which are all risk factors. So we calculate people's cardiovascular risk score, their Q risk when they come in, and they would all form part of that cardiovascular risk score.
Yeah, I'm just going through some of the questions that people have given us to ask you. How serious are palpitations, and when should a woman seek further investigation if she's experiencing palpitations?
Palpitations are a tricky one because they can be completely benign and not be anything sinister at all. You can get little extra beats in the heart which cause palpitations. I think if they're sudden onset, getting worse, if you can feel the rhythm and it's very fast, or you feel the rhythm and it's very irregular. A lot of people come into me now with their Fitbits and they say to me, and I was getting an email this week from a company that's doing Fitbits, and when should they be concerned about the Fitbit showing abnormal rhythms on their device? So that can be really tricky, can be a confusing one to look at. But I think if you're having, new onset palpitations, it's probably a good idea to talk to your GP about it, and they may say to you, well, look, we'll do an ECG and we'll see the basic rhythm of the heart, or we need to do a little bit more. Probably depends on the type of palpitations you're having, and also things like family history, and do you have any associated symptoms like chest pain, shortness of breath to go with that? Is it happening at rest, or is it happening when you're exerting yourself, or with movement? But palpitations can be a tricky one, and obviously, menopause, so many people have palpitations in menopause. I know Ciara Geraghty, the Irish author, wrote about how her first menopausal symptom was palpitations, and she kind of thought she was having a heart attack, and then by the 10th night of palpitations, she decided it probably wasn't because she was still alive. But
But it still depends. But you check it anyway, because
absolutely,
you don't know. That's
like
the thing.
in that case, I would definitely be checking it because it's persisting as well. So sudden, severe, and persisting symptoms, I would certainly be seeing a GP. And a new symptom, like any new symptom, like that lady I was talking about with the shortness of breath, it was just a new symptom. Everything else was fine. I couldn't, there was nothing to check on exam. Blood pressure was fine. Everything was fine. It was a new symptom, and it just needed looking at.
Yeah. Just looking at some statistics, which is very, very interesting statistics, some scary. Of course, we know that 1 in 4 women dies from heart attack, heart disease, I should say, and stroke. But the good news is that 80% of premature heart disease and stroke can be prevented.
Exactly. So all through those things we've been talking about, not smoking or stopping smoking, movement, maintaining a normal weight, and making sure your diet is adequate, and particularly fibre, because fibre is so good at lowering cholesterol and blood pressure.
Can I ask you about statins? That's another question we've got here. I suppose debunking the myths as well around statins. What do women need to know about managing cholesterol and of course, taking cholesterol medication? When do we need statins?
So basically, if we've done a cholesterol blood test and we found your LDL, which is your bad cholesterol, is high, we usually calculate your cardiovascular risk score, which I've spoken about a few times, your Q risk score. And at certain percentages, we'll sort of recommend a statin. Now, that doesn't mean you definitely have to take a statin. It might be just that we're talking about it. And some people will say to me, well, can I try 6 months more of lifestyle management? Lifestyle management being the healthy diet, losing weight, exercising, stopping smoking. And then we would look at it and check the cholesterol again, recalculate that little percentage, and see, is it still up above a limit where we think we need to start a statin. So it's another, I think, there's probably a little bit of fear around statins. There's billions of people in the world on statins who find them, just fine and don't have any problems with them. But I think, they're just another tool. They're part of the toolkit. But like the European Society of Cardiology guidelines would still be lifestyle changes. So those things I've been talking about, movement, fibre, not smoking, at the first step, and then a statin would be, a step above that. So it's at the end of the day, those basics that everyone can make a change in their life about, in terms of those basics, is always there.
It's always there first, yeah. But I suppose there's a certain point, if you're predisposed, you have family, and people always think of cholesterol as like a really unhealthy lifestyle, but there are people that are going to get high cholesterol at a certain point in their lives, and they may be completely underweight or just
Absolutely.
Perfect weight, healthy, everything.
And again, that probably comes back to genetics, that it runs in the family, and there's nothing you can do about that. And at the end of the day, having a normal cholesterol through whatever means is just really important. We reach a stage where we say, well, look, we can't really keep, it's a bit risky to keep you going along on this route of a high cholesterol when it could be causing damage to your heart.
What do you think, Sharon, now after, I mean, when you look back, of course, now it is, 2019, so you can look back now and what happened to you and going forward. What are the most practical steps that you've taken to yourself?
I think there's been a few things. So, first and foremost, I think when I came out, and as I said, I initially wasn't really speaking to people, there was something that was a great help to me besides the Facebook group, and that was really from the Facebook group. It was recommended that I go onto the Irish Heart Foundation website for more information, because obviously I had some information, but you forget a lot of what you're told, as I said, and so a few weeks in, I'm kind of saying, right, I wanted to know more. I was kind of hungry for information, and it was great to have that resource there to be able to go and find information and also be directed to further information and research that was being done and all this kind of stuff. So that was great. And then when I did start talking to people, that was a huge support as well, because obviously I kind of felt less alone then. I felt very alone. That was one thing. Lonely was a word that I think I would use most to describe how I felt after the heart attack. Even though people were all flocking around me and everybody wanted to help, friends and family, everybody was fantastic. But I felt completely alone because I had all these thoughts in my head that I wasn't able to talk to anybody about. But as soon as I start doing that, that loneliness went away very quickly. So I would say that was one of the biggest helps to me.
I think also it's probably, as you said, when you ended up in hospital, you were in a ward with just all men. Because, see, we need to debunk the fact as well that heart disease and stroke are not just for middle-aged men, for women too. And you're like the example of this, the total example, because that is one myth I think we need to understand, that the reality is 1 in 4 women dies from heart disease, I should say, and stroke too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, I think the Irish Heart Foundation has done an incredible amount of work, and we're even incredible as well in terms of campaigning for this. And it's definitely, begins.
Well, I've learned too, because I think I'm like a lot of women watching today that I didn't realise. I thought it was very much a middle-aged men, that heart disease and stroke was not so much away from us, but much more rare.
Yeah, and I think the really important thing as well is the little changes make a difference. And I must copy and paste the Irish Heart Foundation website nearly every day, 10 times a day, because I send it on very often to people, because it's great.
All the stats are there, all the
little videos.
All the little videos, yeah.
And the 28-day planning, where it gives you 28-day calendars, so what you can do over a 28-day period, and little videos to click on, little small changes you can make. So it is, hugely, and actually there was a great paper that came out in 2017, and it was called Beyond the Bikini, Looking at the Cardiovascular Health of the Nation.
Right.
Because we very much focus on breasts, wombs, cervixes, ovaries, which are really important. But actually, at the end of the day, more women die from cardiovascular disease than they do of cancers of the bikini organs. So it's really, really important for us to be focusing on our cardiovascular health. And that, it's small changes that you can make, and then just small things that we do in GP in terms of a blood pressure check, making sure you don't have diabetes, and a cholesterol check at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well when you look at the stats. We don't want to bombard you guys with stats watching today, but only half of women, just 51% of women, said that they knew the symptoms of heart disease and stroke as well when they were polled. And a lot of people, again, when we look at polls, women don't want to go because they're kind of worried to go and have heart checks because they're worried about the cost of it. And I mean, you can do it in your GP. I don't know if people realise this.
Yes, I mean, I think people think of angiograms and ECGs and Holter monitors, which is where you wear a monitor for a day, as being, a test for checking the heart. But, getting on every blood test, we can run off a cholesterol test so easily, diabetes testing. If you have a medical card, you get the blood done with the GP. If you've done a medical card, you get blood done with the GP. So that's not an expensive test to do. Blood pressure monitors, if you have a medical card, they're free. It's we run off an STC, so it's free to get a blood pressure monitor, a 24-hour blood pressure monitor, or you can get them done privately. Maybe if you're a private patient and don't have a medical card, you can get that done with your GP. So not expensive. There are some additional tests that we like to do that are really helpful for certain people if they have certain risk factors, and some of those are a little bit more difficult to access. And they would be expensive. But at the end of the day, they're only a limited number of people who need those tests done. The really important tests are the basic tests in terms of blood
Basic
pressure.
risk assessment you will
Yeah.
get when you go into your doctor, like Louise or any other GP. You can have your blood test done. You can do an ECG in the doctor's surgery if
Yeah.
you feel you need it.
Exactly.
So the reality is we should try and do that. I get it never ever occurred to you to even think. Did you ever go for a heart check, or did you ever feel?
Not once. No, not once. And since it happened to me, obviously I got a monitor. Then they're so cheap to buy now
was gonna say as
online.
well, yeah.
And like so, every now and again, my husband will say, "Come on, we'll all have our check our blood pressure," and he'll do the blood pressure check on all three of us. And it's there, it's handy, it's in the press, and like I mean, it's just so easy to use as well. And we do that regularly now. Maybe like once a month, he'll check all three of our blood pressure. And I would never have had that done. I think my GP maybe took my blood pressure, you know, the way routinely, just if I was there for
You're going in
something
for
else.
something else, yeah.
If I was there for something else, he would have taken my blood pressure just as a routine step. But other than that, I never actually went in and asked, you know, for any of those things to be done.
And did you
or-
ever check your cholesterol?
No.
You never checked your cholesterol?
Never, not once.
So you
no.
weren't a regular person to have blood tests every year?
No,
Did-
I'd only go to the GP if I was sick. If I
See, this is
started
the thing,
getting
you see. I think we have to get more into. I know in other countries, say in America, they have the medical every year, different things. Now, this happens here a lot too, and unless we're forced to do it for work.
Yeah.
But I think the most basic thing is going to the doctor and having your regular annual health check, bloods, you know, checking your pulse, checking your blood pressure. Do you find people are coming more to you now, Louise? I hope things are changing a little bit.
Definitely. Now, I'm very lucky because I work on Grafton Street, so we probably have a lot of patients who are more, private patients, but loads of them are coming in and check once a year. And I'm pretty good at keeping an eye on out for people and telling them, you know, to come in once a year as well.
You remind them.
I'll remind them to come in, which I'm sure
We
they.
need a GP like you, haunting us with the whole lot.
And actually, that's a good thing about the piece with the HRT, because you tend to see people, you know, every 6 months actually, really for HRT. But then at least, you know, once a year you can be like, you know, saying to people, get your bloods done. My little check is bones, breasts, bloods, and blood pressure. So the 4B.
Say that again. Bones?
Bones, breasts, bloods, and blood pressure. So there's lots of other things as well. But when
That's
people
really
come in-
good because you're kind of covering most women's issues, you know, the risk issues there.
So the blood pressure is the blood pressure, the bloods is the cholesterol and the diabetes testing. The breast is making sure, you know, is your mammogram up to date, or have you been checking your breast yourself? And then the bones is just always top of my list in terms of bone health in women as well.
Sharon, are you on medication now after?
Yeah, just aspirin and bisoprolol, a beta blocker. I was treated very conservatively. I didn't need stents or anything like that. So it's just kind of to keep the blood pressure low and obviously to prevent clotting.
Brilliant.
So that's it, really.
Well, that, I
So
mean,
I'm very
so how is your lifestyle now? I mean, you know, we talked about the anxiety and all that in the beginning, and that took a lot. And also, you were symptomatic afterwards with pains, almost. So if you do have heart issues, you can feel that afterwards. So now, all these years later,
all these years, at the very rare time I might get a pain, and straight away I think, is it happening
Right,
again?
yeah.
But my husband always says to me, is it the same kind of pain that you got the first day? And it never is. And he said, you'll always know, because he said it'll be an unmistakable pain. And it was an unmistakable pain. It was different to any other pain. So I don't worry so much anymore. I don't stress myself out so much the way I did before. I think if the way I am now, I'm a much happier person now.
Right.
I don't think I was happy at all back then, looking back. I was so busy I didn't even think about whether I was happy or not. And now
That's
I've
really
learned to
interesting.
slow.
You were just going along
I was
like
just
a robot.
going through like a robot, going through life, trying to get things done, ticking boxes. And I'd stopped doing all things I loved. As I said, I used to be very sporty when I was younger, very fit and active. I played piano, all these things. I wrote music. I stopped doing all those things for myself. And then it was like when this happened, I started looking at reevaluating my life. Only 2 months ago, I left a job I was in for like 10 years and decided I'm going to go back into community work. And I'm so much happier. I'm like a different person walking around the place. So it's just, and it's all taken time to get here to where I am. And I think just really slow steps, just small little steps, looking at, right, how can and I love being out in the garden. I never took time to go out in the garden before. My husband used to do that. He got great pleasure out of the gardening. But then over the last few years, I've started going out helping him, planting things and just getting my hands dirty. And it's just brilliant. I love it. And just being out there and listening to the birds singing. Small things like that, just being out in nature has made a huge difference. Not just to my mental health, but I think to my physical health as well too. Going for the little walks and stuff in the evening. I used to be breathless before, just going for like, you know, a small walk, I'd be out of breath. And now I feel bit by bit it's kind of building up a little bit. I still have a long way to go. I think I need to, you know, work on losing a bit of weight and stuff. I still eat a lot, so I need to cut back on that. But, you know, I feel like a different person now to the person that, when I look back at the woman that I was before the heart attack, I just think, compared to who I am now, how I feel, it's so different, just how happy I feel. So in a way, even though it was a terrible thing that happened to me, it woke me up to my own life, you know.
I love
start
that.
valuing
Yeah.
it, you know.
Now, there are people watching today, and I know the type of heart attack you had. There was nothing you could have done. It just came on you. It was one of those type of heart attacks. But for people out there that haven't gone into the garden, that haven't been listening to the birds singing, that are running around, what would you say to them now? Would you say to them to take a look at their heart health?
Yeah, I would say to them to take a look at the way you're living your life, in all round, not just with the smoking and the diet and the exercise, which I think we all know in the back of our minds those things are very important, and we could be taking little steps to change those. We don't have to do everything dramatically all at once, but just start doing little things. But also, as I said about women always looking after other people, and loving other people. We're great at loving other people. Start loving yourself as well, and start, you know, putting that little bit of time into doing things that you love. I'm sure you used to love doing this or that. I'm meeting some fantastic women out and about at the moment, and they've been telling me all the different things that they're doing, like knitting clubs and line dancing and all these great things that I never even thought of kind of getting involved in. And it's just like there's so many things we can actually do for ourselves.
For your life, as you
Yeah,
said. Your
for
life almost
ourselves.
started because you got a jolt, pardon the pun.
Yeah.
But the reality is you could do that now. People watching now, just really put yourself first.
Yeah, put yourself first. That would be my number one thing. Put yourself first, and in every way, not just doing something like that you love doing, but again, like Louise said, really taking a look at what little changes could you make in life. If you are a smoker like I was, try and give them up. You know, I tried lots of times and failed. And incidentally, again, I go back to my husband again. He was the one who told me he'd had a conversation with a surgeon one day who was doing open heart surgery on all these cancer patients. And he said to him, if you stay, because I tried the patch a few times, and after about a month or so, I'd give it up because I'd say, oh, I feel grand now. I felt strong. And he told him one day in surgery that if you do the 12-week course and you come down gradually, it nearly works for everybody, but you have to complete the full program. And when he told me that, it kind of stuck with me. And that last time I completed the full program, and I haven't smoked since. Brilliant. So I think it's about really, you need to be determined as well too. I really wanted to give up, but that did stick with me, and I thought I'm going to stay on that full program and do the whole thing, go down to the the lower levels of
get there
nicotine
eventually, not
just rush it and go after a month. Oh, this is great. I've been off them a month now. I'm strong and I don't need the patch anymore. Or it's itching too much or whatever. I stuck it out, and it was the best thing I've ever done. Was giving up those cigarettes. So even if you can just try and change one thing like that first, then start worrying about
bit by bit
if
you
it's
get
your
there.
weight or if it's whatever the next thing is. But the cigarettes would be probably the most deadly, and then maybe look at your weight as well and your diet and the exercise and all those things as well. So.
Now, Louise, just for you, I suppose the most important thing to take away, we talked about giving up smoking and your weight as well. That's really important, and get fit. What would you say?
Yeah, I think it's that self-reflection. I think it's kind of reflecting on, well, what am I doing in my life right now? And that can be, yes, your health piece, but also your happiness piece as well. And actually, sorry, I keep saying it, but the Irish Heart Foundation have a lovely piece at the start of their self-care wellbeing journey about self-reflection. Pause and reflect. I think that's really nice, because I think, as you said, we're really busy. Every day is just leading into the next day. You're not really getting that time to actually stop and think about things. Yeah. So I think that self-reflection on, well, am I happy? But also, what am I doing in terms of my heart health and my health in general?
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very, very much. Now, before we go, thanks to Louise, of course, Dr. Louise, GP. Talk to your GP. That's her first thing, isn't it? If you're having any symptoms. And Sharon, thank you so much for helping us navigate as a regular person, walk with you in your feet through this, because I think that's so important. What happened to you was such a shock and all that, but prevention as well is key. And by prevention, as Louise said, and as you said, small changes every day. Before we come to the end of this webinar, I just want you to take a look at these two poll questions that will be on screen right now. Okay, it would be really helpful for you to answer those questions for us, because it will help the Irish Heart Foundation, of course, know what you need, what helps you out on this journey into heart health for the future. Also, of course, these webinar will be recorded and sent to you. We'd ask you to talk, to share and empower. Share this webinar with your friends, your daughters, and of course keep talking about heart health. That is it for us. We hope that this helped you a lot, that you know the symptoms now, the invaluable information from our Dr. Louise, and of course from Sharon, who had a heart attack and has helped us kind of see what it's like, and also help going forward. As she said, in a strange way, it kind of started her life, but we're hoping that you won't have to have a heart attack to get to that. So thank you all for being with us today. Remember to talk, to share and empower. irishheart.ie. Great resources there, free resources from the Irish Heart Foundation. Pop on to the website. You can also find these leaflets there. It will help you on your journey of heart health. Thank you so much for being with us.